and welcome. My name is MiniBetrayal and this is Dyson Sphere Program, where we are immediately unlocking the Interstellar Logistics System, which is something we're going to be using very soon. But anyway, we're jumping right in by firstly powering things up. We did a bunch of work at the end of the last episode. I will mention right at the beginning, by the way, before we get too much done, that it's actually been a couple of days since I recorded the gameplay footage for this and for the next episode, actually. So I have given myself a little preview, but I may have to come back and sort of remind myself of exactly what I did. But anyway, so we've got, that was the graphite production setup. The graphite is used for the blue motors primarily, I think. But we set up a whole bunch of other factories in the last episode, so the first thing we need to do is get them switched on. So we're just flying around, hooking everything up, and as it turns out, the power network on this planet can actually handle it, pretty much. But we have even more to do. So we need to make the red motors, we need to make the green motors and the blue motors. We also want to get some circuits set up. I think that's one of the things we do this episode. Essentially everything we need to make accumulators and the what are they called? The energy exchangers and the logistics towers, so we can actually produce our power on another planet and then bring it to where we need it. So starting off, well, I guess we've already started, but continuing off, if that's a word. Continuing with just bringing the materials I've made in all of these factories to approximately the same place. Now these are quite spread out, so there's a lot of belt work going on here. Luckily when I came to this planet I did bring a lot of belts with me. So I think here it is, we are bringing silicon crystals and copper with us. I think that's what we've got anyway. Yeah, so we've got those, we're bringing them to the magnets. So the first thing we're going to make is the coils, because we need a whole bunch of coils for the motors. So coils themselves are magnets and copper. Yeah, so I'm just working through the ratios in my head here. I decide I'm not going to do perfect ratios, as long as I have almost like handcrafting ability, or handcrafting scale, I guess, of the buildings. So the logistics tower, the energy exchanger, and some continuous production of accumulators. I don't really mind how fast it goes. We'll start off with just 3 machines making the coils, this is a perfect example of when I said I was going to forget what I was going to do. Okay, yes, going into the red motors. So we've got the coils now with some iron and some gears. This should give us, once I figure out what I'm doing with the belts there, this should give us red motors. Yeah, that's what we've got going up there. And, you know, upgrades along the way as well. So I think I set up 4 machines here. Yeah, that looks about right. I'm hoping at least I'm keeping an eye on my personal energy usage, because yeah, you see I'm having to steal some graphite off the belt there just to power my own suit, because we don't have good power production on this planet. But then, yeah, after doing that, I realized that the green motors also use the coils. So I'm wondering if I can do some kind of setup where I have the coils go down the middle and have the red motors feed directly into the green motors machine. Because I don't actually need red motors for anything at the moment other than feeding directly into the green motors. But it takes 2 red motors to make 1 green motor, so I'm trying to be clever here and set up some 2 into 1 thing, and it does actually work in the end, which somewhat surprised me. So we've got red motors being crafted on the left, green motors being crafted on the right. The coils are going to go through these splitters down to the middle, where they can be accessed by both the red machines and the green machines, or rather the machines making the red and the green motors. And the iron and the gear wheels, they use the splitter crossing technique there to come down the left hand side of those red motor crafters there. Okay, Then going into the blue motors. Each of those take 2 green motors. They also take slightly longer, so the ratio is not perfect. But they also need magnets and graphite as well as the green motors. Now I end up changing this later because, as it turns out, we need green motors on their own for something. But you can sort of see what I'm doing here. Bringing the graphite in with using the splitter crossover thing again, and bringing in a line of magnets from our magnet factory over there in exactly the same way. The theory being that I can feed those, feed one from each line into the blue motor factory, and then just put the output straight in a box. Okay. Then looking at the accumulators, is it the accumulators that needed the green motors? Something needed the green motors, and I don't remember what it was. Let's have a look. Okay, so the energy exchanger needs purple boxes and purple particle containers and processors, so we'll have to make those as well. The particle containers, they need graphene, so that's something that will need to be sorted out. Okay, it's moving a little bit too fast for me to follow, but something in there I've realized I do need the green motors for something. It might be the accumulators, might be something else. So I'm pulling the green motors off onto their own line, and I'll put the blue motors somewhere else. Okay, the accumulators, which is probably what I'm going for first, they need the crystal silicon. So using my favorite splitter crossover technique there. Did I just cross over 2 belts one immediately after the other? Yep, I did. Okay, well, I might undo that in, from your perspective, a couple of episodes' time. Clearly wasn't paying attention to that. Crossed 2 belts and then immediately crossed them back. Okay, so yes, the accumulators need the crystal sulfur, and oh no, they do need blue motors. Okay, the accumulators. Something definitely needs the green motors. Okay, so trying to figure out an elegant way to get the belt of the I keep calling it sulfur in my head, silicon crystals, and I'm not ever so happy with this. It's a bit spaghetti, but we get there in the end. Also, the playing with the belts at height is not a trivial thing to sort of figure out how to do. So I spent a little bit of time trying to get the belt to go exactly where I want it. It's a little bit tricky to figure out where to put the mouse to actually have the belt getting where you need it to be. But eventually I figure something out that's not horrible. There we go, and then down to the ground. Okay, so we've got green motors there, which I'm splitting, sending some into a blue motor machine. We don't need blue motors for... In fact, I think that we don't need blue motors for anything other than the accumulators at this point. I could be wrong. I guess we'll see what we do. But we've got the magnets, the graphite, and now the green motors coming in from the left, and they are spitting out blue motors. This is probably going to be our accumulator machine. Let's see. Okay, so we've got some iron coming down. Run out of belts finally. There we go. So we've got some iron, we've got some of the crystal silicon, and yeah, I'm just going to feed the accumulator machine directly from the blue motor machine, taking the silicon and the iron and just dump it in a box. So I get that set up first because I need a lot of accumulators for this to work. Power tower doesn't really help the factory at this point, but it gets me what I need. Okay, so next up we've got the processors. Now processors are made of circuits and something else which is only used for processors, so I haven't bothered to memorize what it's called. It's just an intermediate step that is made from copper and silicon compared to a circuit which is made from copper and iron. Now this is apparently something I missed. Microcrystalline components, there it is. This is apparently something I missed in the previous episode where we were setting up the factories, because I don't actually have any silicon set up. I've got silicon crystals being smelted twice directly into the silicon, but luckily this planet has a bunch of silicon on it. So set up some miners. Need to pinch more iron. by the looks of it. What's this for? Belts, probably? I'm a little bit short of belts. Yeah, because I'm picking up gears. So gears and iron will give me belts. Okay, so yeah, we'll mine this patch of silicon here. We'll smelt it into silicon bars, but not into silicon crystals. And I've got 2 lots of 3 here. Keep it approximately balanced. And then we'll send those silicon bars over to become the microcrystalline components. Okay, so the silicon bars, they take 2 silicon ore, becomes 1 silicon bar. So, but they are smelted at like half a silicon bar per second, or they use 1 silicon ore per second. So it'll be 6 on each side, 6 miners on each side, feeding directly onto 1 output belt. Or not 6 miners on each side, sorry, 6 smelters on each side, feeding directly into 1 output belt, and that will turn 2 belts of silicon ore into 1 belt of silicon bars. So just finishing up the belts here. Letting the drones do their work. Running out of power in my mech again, so having to go stand by one of the power towers. Or stand by 5 of them, 6 of them. You'll see me using this trick quite a few times, I think, until I get a decent power source. Okay, so yeah, now I need the belts to actually... I didn't see where that belt came from. That belt was doing something important. It wasn't bringing the silicon bars here, was it? I think it might have been bringing extra copper over. This is the downside. I'd say in future, apart from the next episode, I will really have to make sure I record my post-commentary immediately after recording the episode. Fortunately, I just ran out of time. That is... Yes, that is taking extra copper from the end of the line that is making coils. Okay. So we've got some iron coming in there, which I'm using the splitter crossover to cross over with the copper, because the copper is used on both sides of this little setup here. And then we have iron on one side, mixed with the copper to make circuits, and silicon on the other side, mixed with the copper to make microcrystalline components. I don't remember how many of these I put down, just 2 or 3 on each side, I think. So again, not ratioed ever so well. 3 on each side, there you go. And then the outputs of those I will feed into another machine or 2 that makes the processors. Okay, so I've got silicon coming in, just need to finish off the belt here to get the copper coming in. Then we should feed those belts around to the left from this side to make some processors. So there's the microcrystalline components, there are the circuits, there is 2 machines, 1 machine, 2 machines, 1 machine, 2 machines, 3 machines making processors. Okay, and they just go straight into a box. As far as we're concerned at the moment, the processors are kind of like an end product. I could feed everything in and actually have a building make the stuff for me, but we need to combine it, amongst other things, with the particle containers. Okay, running out of belts again, and running out of power again. There's a bit of a commonality in the theme of this episode. We also need to get the green motors out this way, so using our favourite splitter technique again. And run out of stone for boxes of all things, so I have to go and mine some manually, but that's fine. It doesn't take a lot of stone to make a box. But running out of iron for belts again. So yeah, just hoovering up gears from existing belts to make more belts. It's it's the same sort of thing you do in Factorio. It doesn't seem to happen in Satisfactory as much, interestingly. Anyway, so yeah, we're making purple particle boxes here, purple people eaters, and so these are the ones that take the green motors. They also take the processors, and these also need graphene. So these belts here, one is an input belt which comes from a storage chest, and the other is an output belt that goes to a storage chest. So the output belt is fine, so we need next to go and make some graphene and put it in that box. So we are heading back to our home planet, First Landing, which means I need to power myself. There we go, we're all powered up. And just a quick check on how many accumulators we've managed to make, and should be off we go. Yes, here we go. Off we go back to... Oh, I decided to take some titanium with me. There we go. Back to First Landing. So... Now, I'm trying to remember what I've done that you've already seen and what I've done that you haven't seen. I don't want to be commentating out of order. This particular journey I do have to be careful because I have no fuel in my mech. If I run out of power, it's going to be super difficult for me to land. But I think I do manage it without any trouble in this episode. Unfortunately, it just means I can't accelerate to our top speed. That's fine. So here we come into our home planet, and that does make me completely run out of power. Luckily I'm just within reach of the power station where I managed to land, so that gives me, well, it would give me enough fuel to fuel myself. Unfortunately I filled up on titanium, so I have to drop a little bit of my titanium on the ground so I can pick up the fuel, so I can fuel my mech, so that then I can pick up the titanium again and then go stand somewhere where I've actually got some power. Okay. So, yes, no fire ice in the entire system, so we have to make our graphene the old-fashioned way from graphite and sulfuric acid. Now, we are already making titanium alloy, which uses sulfuric acid. So, yeah, just drop off the titanium there. And, yes, so I do have a semi-reasonable fuel source. I've got the hydrogen fuel rods. I have already done that at this point. But yes, this is our little factory where we are making our titanium alloy. I noticed that we're not actually running the machines quickly enough. I think it's in fact I know it's because we don't have enough water coming in. So I'm doing a little bit of calculation off screen there. Need another 2 water extractors, is that what they're called? Another 2 just to make sure we're making sulfuric acid at full speed. Okay, so then I need to combine that sulfuric acid with some graphite. There we go. Luckily there's a coal deposit not too far away, so we'll throw down my last 4 miners on that. We'll smelt that into graphite, we'll combine it with sulfuric acid and get ourselves some graphene, which we can then ferry over to an aqua, where we can turn that into purple particle boxes, which means we will then have titanium alloy, we've got steel, we'll have the particle containers, and we will have processors, everything we need to make the energy exchanger. One more step along the way to our, what shall I call it, a longer term project, medium term project, a medium term project of making a power planet. Okay, so yeah, running out of all sorts of materials here. It was a long trip I spent away from home on an aqua putting down big factories, so fortunately I don't think I've actually picked up belts yet at this point, so yeah, running out of belts again. And yeah, so I do need to make the chemical plants, because the graphene, mustn't get it mixed up, graphene comes from graphite. Yeah, that is made in chemical plants. So come back here, just pick up a bunch of glass and stone and stuff that we'll need to actually make them. And I do that. I forgot to pick up belts again, so that's going to bite me in the arse soon, no doubt. But we throw down a few of these, move the storage container to where it actually needs to be. And this is a fairly standard build. I think I managed to squeeze in 4 of them, yeah. And have to move the storage container again, of course. Power it all up, and then it's just a case of waiting for the sulfuric acid. Say at this point, with just not making sulfuric acid fast enough, or more accurately I guess, the process of turning the sulfuric acid into the aluminium alloy is using all of the sulfuric acid we're making. So I try and throw down a couple of extra chemical plants making more sulfuric acid. but that's still not quite enough. Luckily, the chest there, as you saw, is almost full of aluminium alloy. So, by cutting off the belt there, just to make sure that it's working, the idea is that those machines will fill up on aluminium alloy, and will let some sulfuric acid spill over into making the graphene, just to make sure that it's working. Sadly though, it stacks to 100, so I don't actually manage to get that working before the end of the episode, and we are out of time, so we'll see that in action in the next episode. In the meantime, I will say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again soon.